Hello, everybody. You're listening to the Big Chill Podcast. This is episode 525, Wild Reactions for Wild Card Weekend. Hello, Big Chillians. Welcome back to the Big Chill Podcast. I'm Frank, joined as always with Eddie. Eddie, we talked about maybe not the best Saturday, better Sunday, okay Monday, but it turned out every game but the Tom Brady game turned out to be a thriller.
Well, yeah, I mean, the Niners game wasn't exactly a thriller, but it was close for a while, probably closer than most expected it to be, and then they pulled away. But yeah, aside from that game and the Bucks Cowboys game, everything was pretty interesting. Although I guess you could reverse the Niners Seahawks equation and say that the first half of the Chargers Jags game wasn't close either. I guess neither half was close. It's just that they were close and they were not close in opposite directions in the end.
Yeah. No, you're right. The Niners did pull away pretty comfortably, but it was still a very enjoyable game to watch because, just going into halftime, knowing that the Niners were, I didn't think they were ever in trouble, but on the scoreboard being in trouble made for a very interesting second half. Even just watching them kind of pull away was kind of exciting to see them finally put it together in that second half.
Yeah, I never felt concerned. Like at halftime, I know you sent me the message and stuff. I wasn't concerned at halftime. I wasn't concerned.
I was trying to bait you a little bit with our friend of the podcast who's a Seahawks fan and trying to bait you in a little group chat, but you didn't take the bait.
No, I wasn't concerned at that point. I wasn't concerned when they were driving. Like there was a turning point in the game, which is the strip sack fumble. That from that moment on, it was pretty one-sided. That's when the Niners kind of went on a run. But even then, even if the Seahawks had scored a touchdown on that drive, I wasn't super concerned. I was only going to be concerned in that game if it became like a 2-score deficit at that point, because I was always confident at some point they were going to get stops and that they were moving the ball efficiently enough that they were going to keep scoring points. So it would have only been if all of a sudden it was like the Seahawks winning by 9. I would have been a bit more worried then.
Yeah, I mean, my alternate opening to this podcast episode was to say I found Debo. He's just been sitting in the playoffs waiting for the Niners to get there, I guess.
Yeah, no, he had his, I guess it's going in chronological order in a sense to talk about that game, but I think I find it interesting in the aftermath. There are either Purdy believers or Purdy haters now, and I think both have gone too far. So there's the people who believe in Purdy who think he is the next Tom Brady, and then there are people who say he's just a quarterback in a great system and pretty much anyone could have been doing this and that he shouldn't be deserving any credit, and then actually he didn't play that well. There's people who in the fallout of that game have even said he actually played pretty badly, and they'll point to he got off to a little bit of a rough start.
Yeah,
there's the first throw that could have
definitely had some jitters. Definitely had some playoff jitters, I think, which is normal. I mean, that's gonna happen. Like, if you took out his first quarter, I think he played great overall. Even with the first quarter, I think he played very good. I think he was probably, I would put him in the top 5 QB performances of that week for sure. The stats will tell you way better, and we can get into that in a minute. But I think he's a top 5 QB performance of that weekend.
I think he's top 2. I mean, who are you putting above him?
Prescott.
Prescott's number 1, probably.
Daniel Jones.
Okay,
I think Daniel Jones. Without Daniel Jones, the Giants don't even come close to winning that game.
Okay, I'll put Daniel Jones above him. I'll go there, and I won't put anyone else in.
I'd probably put maybe Cousins. He only had like 6 incompletions the whole game. Cousins. It's just very unfortunate that the final throw is maybe one of the worst picked throws of all time. But we can get into that later. But I think he's in that category. So
that overshadows the whole performance.
At the worst.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, okay, I'll take that. But no, I thought, but it's just funny to me in the fallout from that. And what's interesting to me is people will be like, anyone could have done this, except Purdy has undoubtedly looked better than the other two 49ers quarterbacks this year. So if you think he's just a system quarterback, he looks better than Trey Lance did, who, okay, had a pretty small
Well,
sample
he had
size.
one game, right?
Right, but even in Purdy's first game, he looked better.
Yeah, I
You
mean,
know,
that's tough. You can't make a decision off of one game.
no,
Okay, but I agree. I don't think Lance
and
would have been this good.
and he looks better than Jimmy Garoppolo.
Yes.
And not only that, which I think it's the kind of force multiplier of his performances. It's not just that he looks better; all of their weapons look better. Like Ayuk is more involved, Kittle's more involved. Debo kind of is more involved from a wide receiver standpoint than he was previously. And to me, that's the really interesting aspect to this. Is it's not just he's playing well; it's that George Kittle over the last 18 months had basically become just a really good blocker. There was moments when he kind of wasn't that involved as a real offensive weapon for the Niners. I mean, that's a huge element to how they play. So he's still incredibly useful and the best blocking tight end in the league. So it matters. But now you actually have him involved in the offense in a real way again. And yeah, I
Second
thought
team
it
All
was
Pro. The All Pro teams were announced. Kittle got second team over Mark Andrews, which is pretty impressive.
yeah, and so yeah, I thought it was Geno Smith played really well in that first half. So, it's more credit goes to kind of Geno Smith there. I thought the Seahawks, gave a good go of it in that, they played a pretty complete first half of football, no real mistakes. Whatever Geno Smith had, it was 10, 11 straight completions at one point, something like that.
Yeah.
They played as well as they could. And I think that's more the indication for me. The Seahawks kind of played a perfect first half and they were winning by 1 point. And that was, to me, the reason why I felt pretty comfortable as a 49ers fan was I didn't think that the Seahawks were going to be able to replicate that for another two complete quarters. And so you just thought at some moment in time, I didn't expect the Niners to maybe pull away in the manner in which they eventually did. Like things got out of control for the Seahawks rapidly, but I always felt like the Niners were pretty much in control.
Yeah, I mean, just quickly touching on the Geno Smith, I think this, to me at least, shows he's definitely bought himself a starting job. And I think it kind of puts the Seahawks in a tough position because he played phenomenal this season. And if you can get 3 to 4 more years of this, that's amazing. But the issue is they have a great draft pick this year. And they're in a very tough spot right now of, do they trust this isn't just a one-hit wonder and this is just a late bloomer and finally getting his chance in the right system and this is going to be replicable? Or do you pick you're not going to get nice draft picks like this every year. So it puts them in a tough decision. And I think he deserves to be the starter. He had a great season. He never really faltered, slowed down a little in that second half, but, had a tough playoff game against, one of the hottest teams in the NFL and put up a good fight. So, I think I was impressed, but I thought he would have collapsed.
It also puts them in a tough spot for another reason. Even if you think he could replicate this for another 3, 4, 5 seasons, does it put you in that awkward middle spot where he's going to be good, he's going to get you to the playoffs, you're going to have a few seasons losing in the first round of the playoffs, you're never going to get sort of over that hump. Like, are you ever going to be a Super Bowl contender with Geno Smith? And so does it put you in that terrible middle ground of we're competitive, but we're not amazing. And at the same time, we're not bad enough where we can rebuild. And that would be, which in the NFL, the rebuild process anyway is so complicated. It's not like the NBA or something. You can't just tank and one player is not going to completely change the future of your team in the same way. But that's the other thing. I mean, I think if you're them, the temptation would be to almost put yourself in the 49ers situation of like Geno Smith is like Jimmy Garoppolo. Like he's going to be good enough to have you be a decent team. Probably a young player could learn from him. I'm sure he's been in so many different situations that there's a lot of stuff someone could take away from him. And also a really nice example for a rookie quarterback to follow in some respects of here's a guy whose career he kind of struggled, but he stuck at it. And in the end, he got there.
Maybe like a
I think,
Chiefs Alex Smith Mahomes situation, kind of.
Yeah, like I'd be tempted to draft a quarterback, but to do so knowing that at least for season one, Geno Smith is going to be the guy.
Yeah. I mean, because they have good weapons around them when you look at it. You know, they have Kenneth Walker, who had a great season, and then you have Metcalf and Lockett. And Metcalf played extreme. I mean, he tried to put the team on his shoulders at one point, you know, and he's strong enough. He almost did it. But getting back to the Niners, I think the thing with Purdy that I was thinking about that's going to help him, I think, down the road is he's come in right away and been successful. And he's now, like you said, the team around him is playing so well. And I think part of that is because the team's bought into it and the team has bought into Purdy, you know, being like maybe he is the next Brady. You know, I think the team's bought into that. And I think there's a lot like you see that with certain quarterbacks where they just get in the right situation and then they have this aura around them. And the team just like look at Joe Burrow. If Joe Burrow didn't play well that first season, they could be a completely different team. But everyone thinks Joe Burrow's like the fucking coolest Joe in the block. You know, like, oh, he's Joe Burrow. He's my quarterback. And had he not come out and just played really well, I don't think Jamar Chase says that. You know, I don't think a lot of their team is getting behind him. But you get like Mahomes is the same way, right? And I think, well, Brady's the perfect example of that. Brady comes right in and does great. And then everyone, you know, got on Brady's back and, you know, they were dominant forever. So I think there is something to that when you come out right away and do well, that you get it, like you kind of get this like story behind you and the team buys into it. And I think there are quarterbacks that haven't had that success because, and I think Daniel Jones is kind of that case. Like the locker room says they're behind Daniel Jones, but are they really behind Daniel Jones? You know, because he didn't start out great. He didn't start out hot. So I think that's really helping him.
Yeah, and I mean, obviously he impressed people in preseason, and because they wouldn't have kept him on the roster if there hadn't been something about him. You know, there was no reason to keep three quarterbacks on the roster if they thought he had there was no sort of potential in him in the long term. And when you hear all those teammates speak about him, they say how much he's impressed them throughout that time, even when he was just a third string quarterback, and in terms of the way he's carried himself. But I think also the positive for him in this position, he's never lost, so there's kind of no reason to doubt him. So as a team, you feel as if, okay, this guy just keeps winning. He's had different types of victories. I actually think that come from behind win against the Raiders is a big one to have on his CV at this point from a team perspective, in that otherwise it might have been easy to think, well, we've kind of been in control of games and he's played well, but we've just been managing them. That was actually a situation of, okay, we're down 10 points in the second half. We need the offense has to step up. This defense is not going to win us this game necessarily. So I think the fact that they kind of all manner of victories within that, even Saturday's game being a close contest for 2.5, 3 quarters, and then just being able to consistently not mess up and then be part of the team that pulled away is a nice position for them too. So yeah, I think, look, I don't know at what stage he has to get to. It's an interesting debate before he has that starting job secured for next season.
Oh, I
I don't
think
know.
I think you go into next season with a like a quarterback battle in the preseason. I'm putting in quotations here, but I think you have Purdy as your starter, but you give Lance at least a shot to show if he's the next great, you know, if he's the next Patrick Mahomes, give him a shot at least. And if you see something phenomenal, then maybe you have a real discussion. But I think the quarterback battle is a quotation battle, and Purdy is your starter.
I mean, yeah, I think. Well, look, if he wins the Super Bowl, 100%. If he makes it to the Super Bowl, almost certainly. I don't know if they lose next round to the Cowboys, where you know that you feel as if the Niners are the better team. Like if he loses at a point where you feel like going into that game they were the strongest team, then that maybe reopens the debate to a larger degree. Certainly, it's the problem with being as successful as he is and coming out of nowhere. Everyone loves you while you're winning. There's going to be backlash when they lose. There's definitely going to be the discussion if they lose to the Cowboys, for example, even if they lose to say the Eagles, there's going to be people saying Jimmy Garoppolo would have won. There would have been people saying, "Oh,
I don't
well,
think anyone's saying that, Eddie. Maybe you have some some warped
No,
reality of what Jimmy Garoppolo is?
no, 100%. If they lose this weekend, there would be conversations about Jimmy Garoppolo would have won this game because people would point to the fact that Jimmy Garoppolo's taken them to a Super Bowl, that Jimmy Garoppolo took them to an NFC Championship game last season. Like 100%, people are going to be saying, we would have like Garoppolo would have done better. So I think there can be that part. The backlash is already two things of when read the Purdy doubters. Jimmy Garoppolo has become better and better amongst the Purdy doubters since he's been injured. This guy who faced tons of criticism over his time in San Francisco. Every time he gets injured, he becomes 50% better. Like there's people forget, maybe some of the struggles they went through, but yeah, it's a really nice story in some senses. In some sense, I don't think the story gets enough attention as it almost deserves in just how crazy his life transformation has been in the last 4 months. From a guy who, several months ago, if you'd asked him, "Do you think you'll ever start an NFL game?" the honest answer would have probably been no. I'm sure he wouldn't have said that, but you know what I mean? Like the realistic trajectory for his career was never starting an NFL game. And then now all of a sudden it's potentially winning a Super Bowl. First rookie quarterback to ever start a game for the 49ers, which is a kind of interesting statistic. I wouldn't have thought that going into the game. And the other, just to kind of wrap up the 49ers discussion, how do you think Trey Lance feels? Like, do you think he's sitting there hoping for them to lose?
Yeah, maybe. Or maybe he's already on talks with his agent about how to get out of there. I don't know. It's tough.
I mean, I think he can't get out of there because if you're the 49ers, there'll still be a little bit about a doubt about Brock Purdy, even if they won the
Even if
Super
there's
Bowl.
doubt, I mean, we were talking about this when we were playing hockey on Sunday. Even if there's doubt, why would you ever get rid of someone who has so much potential on a team where you've seen firsthand how fragile quarterbacks are? I would never get rid of him unless it was a phenomenal offer, and you could get a ton back. I would never get rid of 2 second-year quarterbacks who are on smaller contracts than anything you're going to pay once they get past this rookie contract. Like, I would not release either of them or trade them unless you're giving me a ton of.
They're never going to release one of them.
Not release, but I would never trade unless I'm getting a ton.
And that's the issue. They gave up a lot to get Trey Lance in the first place. So someone taking him is probably going to have to. They're going to have to better the offer because otherwise, why would the Niners? For the reason it's a team-friendly contract. You got someone on a rookie contract, so why would you give them up? So
better the offer might be. I don't know.
I don't see why.
At a point, like what if you get to year 3 or year 4 and he hasn't even stepped on the field? At that point, I don't think you're getting a better offer.
But otherwise, what's the incentive from the 49ers perspective? If they have any faith.
Because otherwise, once his contract's done, then they lose him. They don't get anything back.
Like
you're gonna cross a point where you've got to get something versus nothing.
No, I don't think you do. Why? I mean, he's either playing. If he's not playing in year 3, I don't think there's going to be some huge Trey Lance market out there from a trade perspective or from a free agent standpoint. So
there might be.
Who in year 3? It's a guy who has 1 season of college football under his belt, and
I mean, there was a lot of Jordan Love year 3. People wanted Jordan Love, and the Packers wouldn't trade him.
Supposedly, according to reports, I mean, like,
well, according to you, Trey Lance looked absolutely phenomenal in training camp.
No,
according to Eddie, he was like the next greatest generation of quarterback. I couldn't hear enough of it.
It wasn't according to me. I wasn't in training camp kind of feeding that.
From the sounds of it, it sounded like you were because you were the only one who was posting this.
That's not true. But no, look, I think I don't think there's a huge incentive from the 49ers perspective to trade Trey Lance unless you better the offer. Because otherwise, if you don't better the offer for Lynch and for Shanahan, they'll be criticized. Why'd you give all this up to move up in the draft? And then in the end, you've traded him for, 50% of what you gave up. Why on earth did you do that? That's a huge mistake. You're going to get, and why would you take that criticism if you're them? And then, I mean, you had to work through it from there. If you're Lynch, you give him up for less than you gave up to move up to get him. There's instant criticism there. That's mishandling your draft. And then imagine he goes somewhere else and he's good. Now you get the second wave of criticism. Oh, not only did you give him up for less, but you shouldn't have given him up in the first place. So
Well,
from a risk,
let me paint this picture though. What's the criticism like if he rides your bench for 4 years, you let him go, never plays, doesn't sign a new contract, and then goes and is the number one QB next year? What's that criticism like? You not only did you ruin your draft by trading up to get him, but then you didn't play him, and then you let him go, and now he's the best quarterback, better than Purdy. That's even
well,
worse.
well,
At
here's
least he
the
gets
thing is,
something.
I think if for in the next 4 seasons, Trey Lance is just on the bench, that means that the Niners have won at least one Super Bowl in the Purdy era. No, but I mean,
The
realistically, like
Purdy
if,
era. Listen to this guy.
but no, but like this is if you're telling me that Trey Lance is sitting out, so he's got 3 more years, and in that time he's just been a backup the whole time. The 49ers, that to me tells me the 49ers have won a Super Bowl. And if you're then the Niners and you say, well, we won a Super Bowl, you can't possibly, even if Trey Lance goes on to be very good, you can't say it was a mistake. Because the goal is to win Super Bowls, right? I think in sports, a lot of times people get lost as to like, what is your aim here? Teams will constantly be like, well, would you do this trade? You might only win one. You're gonna take on an older player. You're gonna give up a player with young potential. You might only win one championship with it. Then do it, because one championship. A lot of teams have a lot, young potential and then the window closes and they got nothing from it. It's like when people are critical for with the Lakers for the Anthony Davis trade. They won a title. That's the goal, right? You
Yeah,
made a trade. You won a title. You're going to
I
tell me
get
it's
what
a
you're
bad.
saying.
You're going to
No,
tell
no,
me it's a bad
I
trade because you
agree.
might have won 2 titles otherwise, but who knows?
Listen, I've never talked about Anthony Davis in my life, so I don't know why you're yelling at me about that. But I agree with you completely. But what I don't agree with you on is if Brock Purdy suddenly loses in the NFC Championship or the Super Bowl, that all of a sudden you bench him because the guy's lost
I
one
didn't.
game.
I'm not
I
saying
mean,
bench. I'm not saying bench. I'm saying if
I
you
think
for
it's
the
a little drastic that
here would be my
because there's
no.
a
I
lot of
didn't.
luck, right? Because there is a lot of luck to winning a Super Bowl too. So you could be really
Sure,
good and just lose games. I mean, that doesn't mean that you
100%.
don't deserve to be the starter. Like I can foresee Brock Purdy being the starter for 4 years and the Niners never winning the Super Bowl. I imagine them to be going far in the playoffs, but I can see a scenario where they don't win a Super Bowl
I
and
can't.
Purdy's still your starter. It's crazy. That's craziness.
No, but here I'm just
That's
saying. I
crazy.
think if they lose this weekend, then I'd say that's open competition for the quarterback role, the starting spot next season. I mean, look, we've discussed it on previous episodes too. We don't know when Trey Lance is going to be healthy. Like, there's a good chance Trey Lance is not healthy for week 1 anyway. So Brock Purdy might be the starter no matter what, because even if they think Trey Lance is going to be the starter by the end of next season, there's a good chance he's not 100% in week 1. So, the Brock Purdy starting job might be secure for the beginning of next season because it's unclear what the Trey Lance timeline is for him returning. So they might be looking at it anyway of like, and this is the nice thing for them. This buys them the Trey Lance, if Brock Purdy had come in and been terrible and at the point in which Brock Purdy came in, they could have missed the playoffs, if he'd been really bad. Like the season could have really fallen apart. That would have put them like, do you bring, the discussion would have been totally different. Do you bring Jimmy Garoppolo back for one more year because Trey Lance isn't going to be fully healthy? Are you trying to rush to get Trey Lance back? This is, if nothing else, has bought the Niners a lot more time to handle the Trey Lance situation in the best way possible. That's the thing you'd be thinking if you're Shanahan and Lynch. And they wouldn't have had that otherwise. And, also nice because obviously Purdy and Trey Lance are 2 completely different styles of quarterback. So you then also have a larger discussion over what the future of the team looks like from a sort of style standpoint.
All right, I think we've discussed the next 5 years of the Niners for way too long in the least exciting game probably of the day, or the least talked about game, because even the blowout has some major implications of talking points. So
All right.
let's chronologically move, as you enjoy most,
Yeah.
to the most lopsided first half, second half, being the Jags and Chargers. I'm going to start the story at the very end. Did you see how Trevor Lawrence celebrated his victory?
Yeah, I saw he went to the Waffle House.
Yeah, I thought that was actually a pretty cool move. It didn't like I can
I don't know.
imagine it being like 1 a.m. and not much open, and just you kind of just like, let's just get some food and hang out, and not want to go somewhere fancy or something like that, and try and be a little secluded. And there happened to
Yeah.
be, I think, 5 other people in the restaurant, but it was kind of cool just like seeing him and a bunch of his friends and his family taking up 3-4 booths, eating waffles, drinking
Yeah.
coffee.
But there is also
I
there is
thought it was
also
I knew you wouldn't like it
I
because
don't
it
dis no
has this
no.
like
I don't dislike it. I just think it gets the whole like famous people, they're just like us element to it. It's like when Joe Flacco signed the largest contract in NFL history and went and bought Chicken McNuggets. Like,
yeah.
yeah, it's cool, but I think
But it's
people give it too much credit of like, what a normal guy. He went to the Waffle House.
See, I don't think normal. I think kid. To me, that's just he's just like it's such it's you forget how young some of these people are. Because like if I'm in my what is he 24, 25, like that would definitely be something we would do. We would go do something and then late at night be like, oh, let's just grab some food and go somewhere stupid like a Waffle House or something, just hang out. So it just made me feel, wow, they're so young and I'm just getting so old. But
no,
it reminded me too of it just always brings me back to the Giannis story, which is one of my all-time favorites. When he went to go get tacos after he single-handedly won them the playoff game, and then he told them they don't have seats and made him leave. It's like I love that story.
See, but Trevor Lawrence, I can't get a total read on. So this is part of my issue. Giannis, you just know it's super genuine.
Yeah.
He's just like a kind of simple guy who happens to be really good at basketball, but he just likes kind of really, it's like when he wanted to have the garage sale and the Bucks wouldn't let him have it.
Yeah.
Like there's elements to him that he just has this like really simple personality and he's happy. Like he's there, there's nothing thought out. With the Trevor Lawrence thing, what I worry about to a certain degree is like, here's the way to just, we know you're going to be probably at some point moment in time the highest paid player in the NFL whenever you go through that new deal discussion and all these sorts of things. But like, let's just show them you're still a man of the people. Let's go to the Waffle House, with your entourage. Like that's the thing that, and I might be totally wrong, and I don't want to be critical of him for doing it.
It's the hair throws you off. You can't get a read with the hair.
I also just ultimately the hair doesn't help because I never know how to interpret the hair of like
no.
How much is it? It's mildly ironic. How much, you're never quite sure. He also he doesn't have a ton of personality. I know he gets criticized for that video of him trying to give the pregame huddle motivation, and he has the personality of a tree. There's just monotone, like, come on guys, let's go out there and win. It makes it tough for me to judge everything he then does. The fact that he's also in Jacksonville means you just don't see that much of him. So, you just kind of don't really know who he is as a person, which is crazy for a guy who was the, consensus generational #1 pick and then is also winning playoff games. And I still kind of don't know who he is.
Yeah. And I mean, you could say the same about Herbert too. This year, actually these past few weeks, is the first time I've ever seen Herbert on a commercial. And he's on that SoFi commercial, and it's the blandest commercial I've ever seen. He's talking about his interest rates. Like, it's so terrible. And I think he's very similar. I think they're both pretty quiet, closed off people. They don't like the spotlight like some of the other quarterbacks do. Like, obviously, Joe, this is what I don't like, Eddie, is Joe Burrow. He loves it. You cannot tell me he doesn't love the attention, but when you hear from like his family or his friends, they pull the Joe is such a he's a really quiet guy, doesn't ever go out, doesn't do anything, doesn't love the spotlight. But he doesn't love the spotlight because anytime he gets a major win, he's pulling out a $200 cigar in front of 40 cameras. He's wearing the most obnoxious clothing to every
fur
game.
Coat, weird sunglasses.
No, I'm sorry. Don't tell me he doesn't like the spotlight when every chance he gets to be in the spotlight, he tries to shine as much as he can. Like that, I don't buy. But I can genuinely buy that Herbert and Lawrence are just kind of more closed off people. They don't love that spotlight as much. I can see that.
Herbert, I feel like I have a read on because he doesn't like he has no social media. He has all those things where he kind of tries to shun, like he gets almost annoyed when he sees that the cameras on
Yeah.
him and stuff. To me, that seems super genuine. Also, the thing with Herbert, because he's in LA, if he wanted to be that guy, he could be that guy.
Oh,
The,
for
the
sure.
Trevor Lawrence debate is like he's in Jacksonville, so if he
Yeah.
wanted to be that guy, could he even be it? You know what I mean? Like, there's a lot of people who don't know that Jacksonville has an NFL team. Like you're kind of off the map there. So
Herbert is the guy that if he had like a torn ACL and was done with football next week, within a month you see him like up in Wyoming fly fishing and sleeping in his camper van or something like that. Like you'll never hear from him again.
No, yeah. So with Herbert, for example, if it was Herbert going to the Waffle House, I buy it. I just get that's a guy who likes going to the Waffle House, made a calculated decision that it wasn't going to be very busy, and decided that's what he wanted to do. But yeah, with Trevor Lawrence. But yeah, I guess we should, rather than discussing where Trevor Lawrence ate after the game for 5 minutes, we should probably discuss the game itself. Unbelievable that the Chargers managed to lose that game. You have a +5 in turnover differential. I think from that statistic alone, you should just not lose the game. When you have 4 first half interceptions, I think it's impossible to lose the game. To be up 27-0, it should be impossible to lose the game. Like there's just it's like when they said, and I've not seen the breakdown of this, but it's like when they said when the 28-3 Super Bowl Falcons Patriots, that if they just knelt the ball every time, they would have won the game.
I've got some stuff on you.
Okay. The Chargers may not have quite been in that territory, but they probably weren't that far off. Certainly when they got into the fourth quarter, they probably weren't too far off that. But what they did do, I think they only ran the ball 6 times in the second half, which is crazy. They consistently were snapping the ball with like 22, 23, 24 seconds left on the game clock.
Never once did they bring it down to 1 second in the second half.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's just insane. It means either you're so naive that you thought the game was over and you're not even worrying about the clock, or you're too smart for your own good and you're Staley and whatever, and you're trying to. And look, I think not only some of that criticism has to be leveled at Herbert. Like, he's the one snapping the ball, right? Maybe he's getting told, some element of, but if he wants to run the clock down, he can run the clock down. Like, he's fully in control of that to a certain, like he can audible, he can do what he needs to do there he can make that game time decision. So I think some of the criticism has to go to Herbert there, and a better second half performance from him, they win that game. But the play calling and the game management, just atrocious.
So I have a few comments on this game because this is kind of close to my heart a little bit. One, I actually think a better first half performance from Herbert is what they needed. They had 2 field goals where he missed both the passes for a touchdown. One was a tip ball off the guy's helmet, which is unfortunate, but he does that a lot because he likes that sidearm throw, and he kind of asks for that to happen. And then the other one, he missed Keenan Allen like over his head when he was wide open in the back of the end zone. Both of those, you put touchdowns, that's another 6 points. I honestly don't think a team can come back. Another 8 points. I don't think a team can come back from that. But I don't think Herbert is fully to blame. He didn't play a great game, but he didn't lose them the game. He didn't have turnovers, didn't have interceptions. Staley lost them that game. And I've been a huge Staley supporter because he loves the analytics and he loves all those things. But this is a guy who he loves analytics until they're actually meaningful. And then he just throws out analytics and goes off his head. And it's nonsense. Like, what does analytics tell you when you're up 27? Run the ball and run out the clock. Like, all he needed was about 3 first downs in that second half, and they run out the clock, and they can't come back. And you're right, he ran the ball 4 or 5 times the entire second half. That's fucking insane. 2, exactly what you said, they were consistently, the average time they snapped the ball was 15 seconds left on the play clock in the second half. How can you do that? That the first thing you should say is, hey, Justin, run the clock down all the way. You don't have to run it to 1 second because I get it. Then you give the defense the ability to just go right off the snap. Run it to 3, run it to 4, run it to 2. Don't run it to 15 seconds.
It should never be over 15. which if your average is 15, that means you
That's
had
even
plenty.
that's crazy.
That means you had plenty of 25,
Yeah.
26, 27s.
Yeah.
If you want to say, let's get it
5.
15 or under, that
5.
mostly, yeah, but you'd be saying, hey, like, look, mostly we want to be 6-5 under. But if every once in a while you don't want to do 15 and under, so it's not too predictable,
Yeah.
okay, that's all right. But like most of the time, we'd rather have the sack with you snapping the ball with 1 second left on the play clock than an incompletion when when there's 25 seconds left on the play clock.
Yep. And then just the whole play calling in general. I mean, what's Herbert known for? He's known for his accuracy on the deep balls. I mean, he has one of the best percentages for over 15, 20-yard passes in the entire NFL. He had the shortest yards to throw attempt in this entire playoff this round. What kind of offense are you calling there where you're like limiting the strengths of your offense? It was just such a weird performance and like I don't understand what he was doing. And then what's crazy is they had a 4th and 1 or a 4th and 2 late. I think it was in the third or fourth quarter, where had they gotten it, it would have definitely run off play clock. And the analytics were heavy on the go for it. And this guy who always goes for it on 4th down decided not to. Like he got out of his mind. And I don't get it. And maybe he's just so second guessing because in week 18 he plays his starters and knocks out Mike Williams, who's one of his best weapons, because he's an idiot for doing that, and that's just in his head to begin with. I don't know, but I almost think at this point, like I think I would put him on the chopping block. Like I think about firing Staley at this point with how poorly it's gone for multiple seasons now, and then the collapse here with being a 10-win team, injuring one of your best players in week 18, and then losing a game you're up 27 points going into the third quarter. And the last thing I'll say is my dad was furious at the end of the first half. I don't know if you saw it, when they kicked the ball off to the Chargers and the Chargers return man slid down and he went to the 20 and just slid. My dad said it was the most conservative call he's ever seen in NFL history. And at that point, if he could have, he would have bet on the Jaguars to win the game because he knew they were going to go ultra conservative. And I kind of agree. Like, I've never seen that. I've never seen a return man slide. That's crazy.
Yeah, I mean, not to bring the Niners up again, they also kind of made a mess at the end of the first half with deciding to sort of like semi-squib kick it when you didn't.
That was terrible.
Why you just don't have the touchback, and you think that the Seahawks are going to be super aggressive with whatever it was, 15 seconds left, like that didn't make sense either. But no, I'm surprised. It seemingly looks as if Staley will keep his job. Like I think if he was going to be fired, he would have been fired by now for the most part. I think doesn't seem much reason for them to wait. They're also a pretty cheap franchise, right? So I don't see them deciding to take on the additional cost of firing a head coach and then having to hire a new one. That doesn't seem to be the way they like to run things at the Chargers. So yeah, but it's one of those games where sometimes the comeback, you give credit to the team that came back, and in this one you give all of the fault lies to the team that blew the lead. I mean, Trevor Lawrence improved for sure, but then also there was just blown coverages. I mean, they got the touchdown where the guy's, open by 30 yards almost. There's things going on in that game where you deserve some credit for some perseverance. Like it would have been easy if you're the Jags to just be like, well, we've lost. But yeah, it's also, if you're the Chargers, even if they just don't miss that field goal at the end, they probably win the game. But yeah, and I have to admit, I was out. I kind of took my eyes off the game for a bit in the third quarter because, once it got to halftime, I was like, well, this game's over. I don't need to pay as close of attention to it. And then it became increasingly obvious that a comeback was possible. And then it was pretty gripping. But there was, 6 or 7 minutes of the third quarter that I sort of zoned out of just because it didn't seem that interesting in the same way that it did last night in the Bucks Cowboys game. And that time it was completely correct to zone out.
Yeah. And I just, just watch. You're right. Watching that game, the coaching, I didn't understand what they're doing. On defense, they were super aggressive the first half. I mean, even the announcers were making a note of how the D-backs were playing very aggressive, very upfront because they know they like the passes. And then they completely backed off that, didn't blitz them in the second half. How about that end around? I think it was like 3rd and 1, where they gave it to a guy who's never touched the ball on a run since like 2018 or something like that, when he was like a sophomore in college, and he like refused to take the handoff. Like, why? Like, he wasn't supposed to be the person taking it, but the player was injured. But then why call such an important play on 3rd and 1 with a jet sweep with a guy who's never done it before ever? Like, those are just dumb things. I don't know. That very badly coached performance there by the Chargers.
Yeah, and one that's going to take them a while to get over, because this does seem like a somewhat wide open playoffs. There are good teams in it, but you would have given any team that's in this next round sort of has a chance, and you can't always say that. And so to blow that opportunity when you're the Chargers, when you're in a tough division that might get harder because you expect some improvement probably from the Raiders at some point. It's you're not guaranteed a playoff spot, so to have a really terrible playoff outing. But if nothing else, I mean, Staley probably keeps his job. It heaps a lot of pressure on him next season. Like, they've got to be really good next season, or else he's definitely going to be going.
So then the next game was the early Sunday game, and that I think surprised a lot of people, where the Buffalo Bills pretty much held on to beat the Dolphins. I mean, that's the only way I can describe it, is they held on for dear life and were able to make it to the next round.
Yeah, I mean, they stormed out to an early lead. It looked like it was going to go the way everyone expected it to, that it was going to be, super one-sided, and then the Dolphins came back. Dolphins took the lead. And yeah, it really looked like for periods of that second half that the Dolphins were actually going to manage to get the win. Not a very good performance from Josh Allen. And he's had a few bad performances over the last several weeks. So that's a bit concerning from a Bills perspective. I think they're probably lucky in the sense that they're playing. I mean, we'll do our full preview in the next episode, but the fact that they are up against a Bengals team who are losing several offensive linemen per game, and that might make the prospects slightly easier for them. But yeah, it wasn't a very impressive performance from the Bills. And we've, again, another thing we've spoken about in the past, Josh Allen's playoff performances do have some question marks over them. And that's not the kind of thing. He's kind of lucky to have escaped that one, I guess. And if they go on to win the Super Bowl, it will be forgotten, because that's what happens. Almost no team wins the Super Bowl by winning every game comfortably or with, perfect playoff performances. But if they now lose anytime, I mean, probably anytime in the playoffs, but certainly anytime before the Super Bowl, there's going to be, oh, that was a couple of bad looks for Josh Allen again. Is he clutch? Can he be trusted? Is he the guy who can win a Super Bowl? Is he like Lamar Jackson, where you put him in the category of great in the regular season, but maybe not what you need in the playoffs?
Yeah, unfortunately, I think this was the worst played game of the 6. This looked like a regular season game where it was like a week 9, a bunch of people were injured, and I guess for the Dolphins, that you were down to Thompson, so they were injured, but it looked sloppy. A lot of mistakes, a lot of penalties. It was just very surprising, kind of boring at points, even though the Dolphins were winning. Every time you expected the Bills to get the ball and just drive down the field, and it was, bad passes or weird things were happening. And I don't know, I guess for the Bills, they just forget about it and move on and hope to now kind of, like you said, play the Bengals, who don't look as good on offense when half their linemen are down. But I mean, this to me was another issue of coaching with McDaniels. And he had that 4th and 1, was about 2:40 left. And they had to delay a game because they had no timeouts left. And the reason they had no timeouts left was because they had to take 3 in that second half, because they were going to get a delay of game because they were late getting the play calls in. And this is what always bothered me about Cliff Kingsbury when he was in the Cardinals. Every other drive, it seemed like there was issues calling a play and so indecisive. And I don't even know if McDaniels calls the offensive plays, so maybe it's not on him. But I still don't
Sure
get
that
he didn't used to. So he did, and then he stopped. But they were saying this game, it looks like he was calling them again. Like he kind of goes back and forth. So I'm not sure if he was, but regardless, like you can't be so late calling every play and that you're wasting all your timeouts in the playoffs.
So I'm going to give them a slight pass on when they wasted one of those timeouts, which is when it was originally they were given a first down, then it was shifted to a 4th and 1. They didn't reset the play clock for that, which I think screws the team. Like, I think that's unfair because he's probably called a play for the first down. Then it gets told it's 4th and 1, so you've wasted some time there. Because
that was also that last play too. He said on that last play he had been told upstairs that it was a first down, and that's why they were late getting the play in, because he called the first down play, but then realized it was still 4th and 1. But at that point, he had no timeouts left.
So I think that's not great. Like, I think you have to, as officials, when literally in the one instance, they were doing the signal of move the chains, and then they decide, oh, actually no. And I think at that point you got to reset the play clock because that a team has definitely put a play in at this point. And so you've wasted at least 10 seconds of their 40 seconds. And the other sort of caveat there is it's his third string quarterback. So how efficiently you can get a play in is maybe, it's not a guy who knows the playbook inside out and, who you can use some kind of shorthand with or leave some room for him to maybe make some sort of call there, and sort of, we're going to get you in this base formation and, this is the play. But if you see this, go for it. You're probably having to hold his hand through that entire process. So I'll give him a little bit of a break. It's still not great, but I won't be as hard on him as I would have been under other circumstances.
Yeah. I just think, though, from an entertainment perspective, I'm kind of happy this game turned out the way it is, because I don't think I'd want to see the Dolphins in the next round. I mean, it's a very boring offense without Tua.
It is, but you know what? I'll say this. And it will completely change because there's both the Bills and the Bengals are good teams. But from what I saw this weekend, I didn't want to see the Bills in the next round. I didn't want to see the Bengals in the next round. I didn't really want to see the Ravens in the next round, but I gave them a lot of respect for the way that they fought. But out of, in both of those games, I didn't look at that and think, well, those are teams that are Super Bowl caliber, and then now it's one game in the playoffs. And the important thing is you win and move on, and you can improve significantly the next week or the week after. So it's not, I'm not going to say I'm writing off the Bills or writing off the Bengals, but I wasn't in awe of any of the 4 teams there. I guess that's a way for us to transition to the Bengals game, which, if the turning point in the Niners game was the strip sack fumble, the turning point in that Bengals Ravens game is the almost mind-blowingly dumb decision to reach out to try and score a touchdown when you're a yard and a half short of the end zone. I mean, he's not even close, trying to reach over the pile and gets knocked out. Unlucky for him that it then falls to a Bengals player. It gets returned for a touchdown. Like, there's a lot of things there that you wouldn't have necessarily expected to happen, even if it was going to go wrong. But I don't understand why on a kind of QB sneak that would have come into your mind as what you wanted to do. And a shame for him because he otherwise played pretty well.
Yeah. I saw Alex Smith has like a show podcast kind of thing. And one of his topics that he was going to talk about was why he hates the QB sneak. And I don't know, I didn't listen to it, but for me, I love the QB sneak because we watched so many times this weekend of how successful it was, but you need to know when to call it and you need to know how to call it. So one, you don't call a QB sneak when you're in the goal line on the 2 to 3 yard line. That's not QB sneak territory, especially when you have Dobbins, who's a hard freaking runner and will put his head down and try and get into the end zone. You don't start by trying to do a 2-yard QB sneak. Second off, you don't run a QB sneak by running straight up and then trying to reach the ball on top of the players. Saquon Barkley is great at doing the reach over to try and hit the line, but he gets a running start and leaps about 3 feet in the air and is in the air as he's reaching out. He's not standing on the ground trying to reach the ball out. No part of that QB sneak was the right thing to do. It was just a disaster of a play. So I don't know what the hell they were thinking calling that. I mean, and you saw, I don't know if you saw, but Dobbins after the game was really critical and said that that is not his fault at all because he shouldn't even been in that situation and that Dobbins should be getting the ball.
I don't love that.
I don't love it either, but I think he's kind of right. Like I'm not starting calling that play.
No, sure, but I think I don't love that from a player. I'd be really annoyed from if I were all of his teammates. Because, I mean, you're just setting yourself up for it. Are we going to call you out when you're involved in a play in which you shouldn't be? You know, like I don't, because, yeah, he's not blaming the quarterback, but he's then blaming all the coaches and play callers. You know, he also said that they would have won had they had Lamar Jackson. That was another one of his post-game quotes.
Yeah.
So you're not going to throw your quarterback under the bus for that play, but you're going to throw him under the bus for the game. You know, so like,
no, he actually didn't throw his quarterback because his quarterback's Lamar Jackson.
Well, no, yeah, no, the perceived starting quarterback. But yeah, I think, you know, I don't like that. You can maybe say that I'm happy with him going into a team meeting and saying, guys, why am I not being given the ball? It's like the whole farce of the, you know, Patriots Seahawks Super Bowl and not giving the ball to Marshawn Lynch. Like it then turns and gets a life of its own. I'm sure Ravens fans will be discussing that now for years of like, why didn't we just run the ball? Not quite the same significance, but still, it's a bad play call. It's super unfortunate that, I mean, that it gets returned for a touchdown because I think even if he fumbles it and the Bengals get the ball on, I mean, their own 5-yard line from falling on the ball, then it's a bad outcome from that position. But the Bengals weren't exactly moving the ball that well, so the likelihood is they're punting back to them in 3 minutes time, and it's like, okay, that was bad, but we've recovered from it. The fact that
even Mark Andrews almost had him too at like the 20 and then kind of like tripped and fell and missed the tackle. You know, like even that is unfortunate because Andrews had him, like he was flying.
Yeah, no, it's yeah. And the Ravens deserve a lot of credit for putting up a lot of fight in that game and probably almost should have won. I mean, also they have an excellent chance on the kind of semi Hail Mary at the end after it's tipped. You can argue, should have been caught. You know, like it's so hard on the receiver because you know it's a ball that's in flight, gets touched. You're having to react. Like it looks easier than it is when you see it in slow motion and it's there to be caught. But he has a real chance there.
Yeah. If he's just one more foot to the right, he's got that. You know, that's at that point, it's just luck of where you're standing. And if he were just standing maybe even like 6 inches to the right more, I think he gets it.
Yeah, but no, a good game. And a game, you know, it was nice and kind of wrapping up Sunday. It was a game that you didn't expect to be that close and then actually delivered in terms of some excitement. And then that moves us on to, I guess, the game that didn't deliver any excitement at all, which was
the skip right over the Giants.
Oh yeah. Well, we were going in chronological order, and then we skipped out of chronological order.
You skipped out.
Yeah, that was my fault. Sorry. So then I forgot. All right, the Giants. You can have your moment in the sun. And a good
game of the week.
In terms of best team, both teams playing pretty well. Like unlike the other games where you can kind of say someone underperformed. Yeah, it was a good game, and it was, you know, up for grabs right until the end. And Kirk Cousins had that chance to sort of rewrite the script on him not being, and you're right, as you said earlier, he was good for that game, so it's a little bit unfair, but the decision to throw 5 yards short of the line to gain to a receiver coming the wrong direction as well, like there's so much wrong with that final play. And I get it, maybe there was pressure coming, maybe he decided that was the only hope, but I would have rather he just tossed the ball 30 yards downfield and hope for a miracle.
So what he said was the play was originally supposed to obviously be to Jefferson. And he gave the look at Jefferson and he saw the safety over top coming down on him. And he decided that he didn't want to risk that throw. So he went to his next option. And then during that time, he was getting the pressure. So he thought he'd rather just check it down than take a sack and lose on a sack, which I kind of understand. Like that's the shittiest when you just get sacked at the end. But that was the only thing he could do. Is he said he'd rather get it out and hope something could happen, that he could break a tackle, than take the sack. The mistake there though is you had Jefferson 3 weeks ago where they threw it up to him and the guy made one of the most spectacular catches ever. Just fucking throw it up to Jefferson. Like win or lose on your best player. Like don't win or lose on trying to get your Hawkinson to break a tackle and win you a game.
But I mean, yeah, not only that, win or lose on a play that gives you a chance to win. I mean, what were the odds? He's going the wrong direction, so he's got to turn, get past he's being closed down. There's a 0% chance as that play develops that he is going to somehow manage to, even if he breaks the tackle, someone else is probably going to get him before he gets to the first down marker. Mm-hmm. You throw it deep, maybe a spectacular catch happens, maybe a pass interference happens. Like there's you're giving yourself more outs than if you do what he did. So I kind of get what he's saying. Yes, he would have got more criticism if he's just. I don't know. I would have probably almost preferred to see him try and buy himself some time and get sacked than just, we're going to lose anyway. Let's not lose with me on the ground. Like that's basically, he's kind of
I don't want to be the one with the ball last in my hands.
Yeah. He's kind of saying like, I wanted to shift some of the blame there. Like, I don't want it to be just, Kirk Cousins getting sacked to end the game.
I think, Eddie, that you slightly owe Saquon Barkley an apology.
Not really. I've always said Saquon Barkley was good. My point was you don't take a running back. There's no way for them to deliver value on being drafted high in the way in which he was. But
there's a little more than that.
No, it wasn't.
In the beginning of the season, when I said Barkley's back and he looks great, you were saying, yeah, but he's never going to be healthy and you can never rely on him. Well, and now he's had a whole season of being healthy and he did a great game. He had a great game.
Hey, Frank, I know you just won a playoff game and you feel good. Don't go too overboard on the Saquon Barkley's definitely going to be healthy, and then we watch him go down injured one play into the next round. Like let's get to the end of the season, and then you can maybe try and hold me accountable for.
Well, chances are this is the end of the Giants season,
and then we can reassess. But I'm not going to take it because they beat the inconsistent Minnesota Vikings in a playoff game.
13-win Minnesota Vikings.
Yeah, right. But that this is definitive proof that Saquon Barkley. Look, there is no doubting the fact that Saquon Barkley is, when he is healthy, one of the best running backs in the NFL. Like, I've never said otherwise. But as to whether or not I still think it's a slightly wasted draft pick because of how high you took him. And also, it just puts you in a difficult situation in terms of contracts because, I think running backs are the most easily replaceable weapon in your offense. I do think you can kind of, for the most part, with maybe the exception of Derrick Henry, I think you can find replacements if your offensive line is good enough. I mean, there's, some other elements that have to be in place. But
coming from the guy supporting the team with the highest paid running back in the NFL.
But, I mean, here's the difference, too. Like Christian McCaffrey's a massive risk in terms of him staying healthy. And so far he has. And so it pays off for the Niners. If Christian McCaffrey had gone down hurt 2 weeks into being traded, everyone would have said, well, Christian McCaffrey gets injured. If Christian McCaffrey gets injured between now and the Niners winning the Super Bowl, there'll still be some criticism. But also Christian McCaffrey gets used in the Niners offense is pretty unique. And you're talking about a team that hasn't had under 150 yards rushing in the last sort of 8 weeks or something. So I think there's
even more of a waste to have McCaffrey there.
Well, no, because he gets
you're going to run no matter Wilson,
that's true.
Mostert, anyone. Why did you spend and waste so much money? Whereas Barkley, he's got the team on his back.
You're trying to prove a point to me, but I'm not totally disagreeing with you. This is the thing: is I'm like semi-agreeing with you. And the issue with the running back is in both instances, they better stay healthy for the remainder of their respective teams' playoff runs. Because if they go down hurt, particularly McCaffrey's different because you traded for him this season. So then it's like you did this with the aim, obviously, of winning this year. So if he gets hurt in these playoffs, then you reassess how good that trade was, even if he'd been great, which he's been spectacular up until now. I mean, way better than Saquon Barkley. There's not a conversation about who's been better over the last 8 weeks, Christian McCaffrey and Saquon Barkley, because I think it's difficult to have a conversation and say anyone's been better than Christian McCaffrey over the last 8 weeks in the NFL. I mean, he's been that spectacular, but Saquon Barkley's been really good. I just don't draft. If I'm a GM, I'm never taking a running back in the top 10 picks. I'm just never doing it. And then I'm probably, it's rare that I'm like extending someone's contract as a running back. Those are
You
two
just need
things
to admit that Barkley is integral to the Giants' success this season. Without him,
sure.
they are not in this situation.
Probably not. No.
There's no probably.
I mean, there's a probably. I don't know. I think running backs are pretty easily replaced. Saquon Barkley is definitely one of the best. He's a harder one to replace. But, look, I think Daniel Jones is more integral to the Giants' success. Their coaching has been more integral to their success. There's other people who deserve way more credit, some of whom I've doubted. I was a big Daniel Jones doubter. I would have to publicly reassess my opinion on Daniel Jones, which I think I have anyway over the course of this season. But I have to do that before Saquon Barkley, because I at least always said Saquon Barkley was good. I just didn't know if you wanted him on your team because you don't want to pay him what he has to be paid in order to be there. Daniel
Now
Jones.
give Jones his apology then.
Daniel Jones. Well, okay, we're gonna get onto your mea culpa in a second with your Tom Brady defense. So if you're just trying to buy yourself time before we get onto the Tom Brady discussion, let's go there now. This can be the swiftest one. Awful performance from the Bucs. They showed their true colors. They're totally outclassed. They were a team that were only in the playoffs because they were in a terrible division and managed to sneak their way in. And they're just not good. I'm not blaming Tom Brady for that loss because I don't think Tom Brady was that bad. It's just their offensive line is terrible. Their play calling's terrible. Their defense isn't that good. The Cowboys, the only thing of note is the multiple missed PAT attempts.
That Bucs team sucks.
They
should never have been in the playoffs. and
and
I can try and drum up some debate in our previous podcast to try and get a discussion going. But that team is awful.
Don't
we've been saying it all season.
Don't even try that you were trying to do it for the sake of
season. They're awful.
You can't try and spin this. You're doing it for the sake of content. But no, that was
the only thing I'll say that I was wrong on is the Cowboys and Dak played a lot better than I thought they were. That is what I expected the Bucs to look like. But I expected the Cowboys to be much worse and turn the ball over and put themselves in bad situations that maybe could cost them the game. But they played way better than I ever thought they would play. And maybe they were just toying with people and looking forward to the playoffs and more concerned about the playoffs. I don't know. But that was a complete game. And that, I think,
kicking aside,
a little scary if I'm a Niners fan.
No, because it's the Bucs. If they'd done that to a good team, then I might agree with you. But it's the
Bucs don't have a good D?
No. If they had a good D, they wouldn't have won only 8 games. Like there's going to be there's this myth surrounding the Bucs because of what we've seen from them in the past few seasons, that they have a good defense or they have a good offensive line. I mean, they've been plagued by injuries, both sides of the ball. They're not a good team. It's why, as I said, I don't think that's Tom Brady's fault. I'm not saying he was good in that game, but I don't think he was the reason they lost. They lost because they were just significantly worse in pretty much every department. And, that to me, a lot of people be like, well, now he has to retire. We've had the discussion already. I don't think he's going to retire. And I definitely don't think that's the way Tom Brady is going to have his final game in the NFL be. So I think he would have driven away from that stadium being like, I am definitely not retiring now, because that is not going to be the sort of end of the chapter of me playing in the NFL. That's not going to be the final sentence. But yeah, they were just way worse. The Cowboys looked like the Cowboys have looked when they've been good this season. I still think the Niners are a better team. Doesn't mean the Cowboys can't beat them, but I'm not going to be. I wouldn't be the nine. I'd be like the Niners, thinking they were playing against one of the worst teams in the NFL. That's a bottom third team in the NFL that they beat yesterday. They just, because the divisional setup happened to be in the playoffs. And I guess the question is like, do you cut your kicker if you're the Cowboys?
I can't believe he wasn't cut. I honestly can't believe he came back out at halftime. No, but in all seriousness, I honestly can't believe they kept kicking. That I honestly cannot believe that.
I guess the issue is the reason why I can is because they didn't really need to go for two. You know, like I get Prescott was furious on the sidelines, but like there's no, and there was a moment where it's like, well, it's only a 3-score game now still because they've missed all these extra points, but they could have played for another 4 quarters and the Bucks were not going to get the 3 scores required. So I don't think there was any concern. I get that the sense was, and eventually he did successfully attempt a point after, is that maybe that gives him, maybe if you're sitting there, you're thinking, we don't know what the kicking options on the market are. So we don't want to make a decision now. Like if you benched him or if you just start going for two, you completely kill his confidence. And then it's like, well, now we have to cut him. And maybe
what confidence does he have left?
I don't know. Well, maybe he at least has the confidence of the team stuck with me and I made one. And that was a blip. And I missed 5 in total. He missed 5 in a row because he missed one in the last game as well. Yeah. So maybe he just thinks this is some, but overall over the course of the season, he'd been pretty good. So,
all right, let me ask you this. Let's flash forward to next week. Cowboys opening drive, score a touchdown, miss the extra point. Do you ever put him back on the field after that?
No. No, that would be it.
And you know what? He knows that, and I think that's going to fuck him up, and I think he's going to miss it.
Well, that's the problem is he's feeling way more pressure than a kicker would normally feel for that extra point because it's not.
That's why I think you replace him. I think you just get rid of him.
It's his job he's kicking for.
Yeah.
And like, unlike most other positions in the NFL.
This is life. These are Cowboy fans. This is the first playoff game they've won in 30 years. But they are going to be unhappy if a kicker ruins their playoffs.
But it's not even that, right? It's like, you can be a quarterback. You have a terrible playoff outing. Like you'll still get a job as a backup quarterback somewhere. You know what I mean? Like you'll continue to make money in the NFL. Kickers, their careers can just be completely over. Like he could be cut by the Cowboys and he never has an NFL contract again. Like he's selling insurance next year. You know, like there is a possibility that that's the type of pressure that like Dak Prescott will never feel. He could feel like it's legacy defining or whatever, but Dak Prescott is basically guaranteed for the next 10 years to earn astronomical sums of money. That kicker will be thinking, God, if I miss one more, like this should be second nature to me. I've done this 1,000 times in a row.
I can't wait. I cannot wait to see if they score early and he misses again.
And if you're the Niners, you hope that every player walking onto that field when he's walking on is reminding him of that too. You know, like asking him how
poor
much
sportsmanship. Classic Eddie move.
No, I like, as you know, I'm sledging that stuff. I'm fine with that. You don't go overboard. You're not insulting someone too much, but
sledging. Keep your bedroom out of the podcast.
From cricket. I'm fine with that. Like if he's lining up to take that kick and you're asking him like, you know, I hope you've got enough money in your savings account and stuff like that. I'm fine with those.
Ooh, right for the financial situation.
Yeah,
social economical status. Wow, cutting right to the heart.
That's where you want him to feel the pressure. You're going to be out of a job tomorrow, so you better be set for, you know, unemployment.
Hope your Roth IRA is settled.
Yeah, exactly. In this economy, you're going to lose your job in this economy. Reminding him about what inflation is. But yeah, really.
Bosa's got like the unemployment stats written on his hand.
That's why they brought in McCaffrey, you know, Stanford grad. He's going to have a really detailed discussion with him, sit down next to him and be like, your financial planning better be pretty good because this is not the time to be unemployed.
Yeah, I mean, we'll see. I think that was, if you're a Cowboys fan, I think you have to be very encouraged with the way that they have been playing the past few weeks. I understand it's the Bucks, but still to come out and to click on all cylinders and to have Prescott look like how you always pictured he would look, but never really does. That was encouraging.
Oh no, sure. And look, I give the Cowboys a chance against the Niners. I'm not saying I would have given the Bucks, if the Bucks had somehow won that game, I would have given the Bucks zero chance against the Niners.
Zero.
Like it would have been, It's just because it also just a terrible matchup for them. You would have just known Brady would have been under constant pressure and stuff like that. I still think it's a completely different prospect for the Cowboys, right? And Dak is going to be under pressure, and that is going to put him in uncomfortable positions. And the Niners probably will force turnovers because they always do. Like even if their defense isn't playing that well, there's going to be a turnover. There's going to be 3 and outs. There's going to be sacks. There's going
I
to
mean,
be
they
long
are
third.
kind of similar teams, except I think the Niners are much better coached. Like when you look, like on a defense, they have Bosa and the Cowboys have Parsons, like that edge threat, that superstar edge threat. On the offensive, you have big rushing attacks with Pollard and Elliott versus Debo and McCaffrey. Like they're pretty similarly matched, but I cannot trust the Cowboys coaching ever.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think the Niners defense is better, but yeah, there are certainly similarities. And I don't know if you can totally trust Shanahan. He has some bad fourth quarter management on his CV. Not only obviously through his involvement in the 28-3 Super Bowl as an offensive coordinator, which he's got, but also this the Super Bowl against the Chiefs when they blew a 10-point lead, and last year against the Rams in the NFC Championship game. Like he's not exactly someone, the Niners being up 10 against the Cowboys as the fourth quarter starts is he sometimes gets a little too smart for his own good as well in the sort of Staley mold of things. But yeah, I feel pretty confident that the Niners will beat the Cowboys.
All right. Well, don't spoil the next podcast predictions.
No.
What I did want to say, Eddie, is we touched on ranking the QBs going into the playoffs, and now this is only 1 week, but currently, according to QBR, this is how the first week of the playoffs turned out. Dak Prescott with an almost perfect 96.5 with 100 obviously being the best. So anything over 90 is phenomenal. Dak Prescott 1, Brock Purdy 2, Kirk Cousins 3, Daniel Jones 4, and then a drop off after that to Huntley, Geno Smith, Herbert, Burrow, and then another pretty significant drop off to Trevor Lawrence, Josh Allen, Tom Brady, Skylar Thompson. So Thompson, I guess, is pretty predictable being on the bottom. Brady, Allen, and Lawrence and Burrow being the next ones on the bottom. Not super predictable there.
Well, Brady being towards the bottom would have been just because of who his team is. Like, again, I don't think that's a knock on him necessarily, but I would have, if you'd asked me to kind of rank what I thought the QB, like if the Bucs were going to win that game, they were going to win that game 21-18 or 16-14, and it wasn't exactly going to be some incredible quarterback performance anyway. It was going to be efficiency, good defense, and maybe a little bit of luck. So it doesn't surprise me too much with Brady. But yeah, there's some Josh Allen and Joe Burrow and stuff being towards the bottom of that's the really surprising bit.
Yeah, but a definite tier right now of the top 4 being Prescott, Purdy, Cousins, and Jones, which unfortunately Cousins isn't going to be through anymore. But Prescott, Purdy, and Jones are still in, so we'll see how they fare.
What was Cousins' number?
85.
So he could finish the playoffs. He could finish the playoffs with the highest average QBR.
He could with 1 game played.
Yeah, I know, but there's a good chance.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? Like there's a good chance that he finishes. Gets the end. But yeah. But on that note, maybe we should switch focus quickly to the Premier League. That was once again eventful. We went into it saying if there was a scenario where one of the teams, either Arsenal or City, lost and the other team won, it would be a pretty significant shift in the look at the top of the table, and that did happen with Manchester City blowing a lead to lose 2-1 to Manchester United. And Arsenal very good against Spurs. I mean, Spurs were flat. Spurs didn't play particularly well. And Arsenal did get some help from Hugo Lloris deciding to chest the ball into his own net. I mean, I don't know why he couldn't have done that a couple of weeks ago in the England-France match. That would have been useful. But, still Arsenal were, and the first 30, 35 minutes, Arsenal looked really good. Spurs kind of got a bit better over the course of the end of the first half and then the second half, but Arsenal looked outstanding for that first period. City, I mean, the real talking point is United's first goal, which was controversially not disallowed.
Yeah. What
With
was what's your feeling on that?
I don't know how it's not offside. To me, it's so by the laws of the game, it's the correct decision. He's not touched the ball. He's not prevented a player from getting to the ball. So by a very sort of direct interpretation of what the laws of the game are, it's correct.
So,
And
so
this,
okay, let me clarify. Like, I want a clarification on that. So, from someone who isn't so ingrained into what like the specific rules are, for
yeah.
me, it looks like he clearly interferes with how the play's going to happen, and therefore, to me, he's influencing the play and what the players are doing. So that, and he's offside, so it should be called. Now, what you're saying is the rule doesn't say that if he like interferes with how the game is played, that's not technically like written in the rules.
So it's one of those rules that has changed numerous times over the course of the history of football and my lifetime. You know, when I was a child, you were offside if you were offside, like the play was going to be stopped if you were
Yeah.
offside and kind of anywhere on the pitch. You could be on the other side of the pitch walking backwards. They were going to say, well, that player was offside, offside. Then they realized that maybe that was too sort of stringent and that there had to be some assessment of like, are you actually interfering with play? And they've kept redefining what interfering with play is, and the way it is now assessed is that it has to be it's in relation to their interaction with either a ball or an opponent. And so with the ball, it is strictly have you touched it or not. Everything else,
Yeah.
ball related, no longer matters. And then with an opponent, it's then have you stopped them from either being able to get to the ball, or in the case of, say, a goalkeeper, have you blocked their view of the ball? And so in Rashford's case, if you see how it happened, the linesman flagged it for offside. That was the initial decision. Linesman says offside. The referee, who's then behind play, has decided he's seen that Rashford hasn't touched the ball and that he's decided that he hasn't either interfered with Akanji, who's the defender coming back, or in any way with Ederson. And so the referee overruled the linesman and then said this is not offside. People have subsequently been really critical of VAR. VAR always deserves a lot of criticism. In this instance, VAR's hands were tied because once the referee had made the on-field decision that Rashford had not interfered with play in any way, at that point from VAR, all they can decide is then was Fernandez offside? Because the referee has told VAR that Rashford is not a factor in this play. So they weren't then looking, is Rashford offside? And they can't reassess. It's a judgment call on the field. So
Yeah.
they cannot overrule the referee saying, actually, unless they'd found that Rashford had touched the ball, that would have been the only thing in the replay. If they said, oh, no, he touches it here at this moment in time, it's no longer a judgment call. But as long as they, in the instance he was correct that he hadn't touched it, VAR could do nothing. So people being critical of VAR are wrong. They should be critical of the referee on the pitch. Now, there's a kind of often quoted, it gets usually attributed to Brian Clough, sometimes to Shankly, that like if a player isn't interfering with play, what's he doing on the pitch? And I think there's a certain logic to that argument at times. In this case,
clearly there though, because he's right there.
Well, in this case, I would say he's at multiple times made moves as if he was going to play the
Going
ball.
to. Yeah.
So it's not like he just had his run. Akanji initially has stopped to play Rashford offside.
Yeah.
So he's then put himself a couple of yards behind play based on that initial reaction. Ederson, as the ball is coming towards him, because Rashford is directly in front of it, is only watching Rashford. So he's positioning himself to save a shot from Rashford. And then at the last second, it's Fernandez who shoots. And so you've also had Ederson be affected by what Rashford's done. I don't know how you can. This is to me where the laws of the game get separated from like how they get written versus if you've played the sport in any capacity. Like that, you can't.
Even if you've not played it, I mean, watching that play, I can tell he's clearly influencing the decisions being made by the opponents and how they're playing that. So how can he not, like, if he's in an offside position and he's influencing how they're playing, how can that not, like, it didn't make sense to me. And then, I can even see from Rashford's perspective, that's a great play by him. because maybe he knows the rule book really well and he
I
knows
see.
that.
See, I don't think he did. Like, because I think he's totally unaware up until almost the last second that Fernandez is even there. It's only when he starts getting the shout from Fernandez that I think he realizes. And I think he's kind of played on, probably expecting to be flagged for offside at some point, but is thinking he's going to shoot. And he's probably surprised. He's running like, oh, surprised I haven't. But you also know with the way the game's played nowadays that they don't blow plays dead just in case. They'd rather let you score and then review it. It's a shocking decision to me. It's really shocking. Like it's now means the law has to be reassessed, but you also is it technically the correct decision? Maybe, but it definitely shouldn't be. But yeah, it's terrible. I just think there's no way you can look at that and not think that Rashford significantly affected the play itself and interfered with multiple opponents in the process in terms of their decision making and how they were then handling what was unfolding. It also then opens you up, that there's going to be, if you're going to be a clever manager, there's going to be very difficult because it's so situationally based, but you might be worthwhile having, if they're going to enforce it, having players sort of be played through running sort of with the ball, but not never touching it, and then allowing other players to come from onside positions to then, like you could come up with these really intricate plays now to
Yeah.
try and
Yeah.
exploit that sort of interpretation. I don't, I don't, I really just think there was no point in watching it that I thought it wasn't going to be offside. And to me, it's that kind of eye test element to it. You watch the play unfold and you're just like, well, it's going to be disallowed. And then, oh no, it's not. That's not right. But yeah, it's a terrible decision. It has huge implications, obviously, for the Premier League title race. It puts, Arsenal now, I'd say, they've they've shifted to being favorites, uh, both from my position and also from a betting perspective. They're now 5-6 favorites. City are 11-8. So this is the first time this season where Arsenal are now sort of expected to win, I guess you could say. They've got
All
tough
right,
matches
Eddie.
ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
Let me ask you this. I'm not even going to ask you about Arsenal. At what point is United a legitimate threat?
Um, Not yet.
What about
But
after this weekend?
yeah, if they beat Arsenal, I mean, look, they'll be telling themselves they are. That I believe. They'll be saying to themselves, "Well, we could if we keep this run going, and if we win this weekend." But it's still a pretty big gap. So I don't think they'll
If
be
they
able to
beat
close it.
Arsenal, then they're six back.
Yes, yeah, five. Yeah, no, six. They'd be on 41 and 47. A significant goal difference. So you'd basically say it's fundamentally 7 points because they have to be ahead. Like, I don't think, even if you say, let's say they win 3-0 this weekend, so that's still going to put them, 14 goals behind. That's a pretty big gap to close. It's doable, but it's a pretty big gap. But no, I think, I think it's too big. I don't expect them to win.
And then, I mean, after that match, they have a pretty favorable schedule. They have Liverpool, Newcastle, and Spurs left, and that's probably their toughest matchups after that. I mean, I would say Chelsea, but Chelsea aren't really tough anymore. So,
No, well, yeah. I think Chelsea will get better, but yeah, no. It's possible, and if you are them, you will be saying, you know, they're the informed team.
yep.
And especially if they win this weekend, then they're definitely the informed team. But it's a weird one because if they lose this weekend, then you'd say it's too much. So if you're saying are they a title contender, and it all comes down to one match in January for whether or not they really put themselves in the title race, that probably means that they're not really a title contender. If you see what I mean, like and they'll still, yes, they'd close the gap. You'd expect they'd still have City ahead of them. Okay, it's only a 1 point gap, but it still means you've got two teams to catch, and you expect one of those two teams to keep some pretty solid form going, and their own fixtures improve as well. So like City, I think in a pretty strong position to go on a, good run now that some of those tougher matches are out of the way. Obviously, they've got the match with Arsenal coming up, but aside from that, they've got some pretty winnable games on the horizon.
The other thing I want to bring up, Eddie, is could we? I know actually we're going to be seeing a Messi Ronaldo match coming up soon, as PSG is playing the Saudi Arabia All Stars or something like that. But could we be seeing more of a Messi and Ronaldo matchup, as a Saudi Arabia club has apparently offered Messi $430 million a year to play for them?
I don't think so. I mean, certainly not next season. I think Messi will stay with PSG, right? But
at what point, though? I understand there are players who care a lot about legacy and care a lot about the game and everything that goes with that. But at what point, what financial point do you say, screw it? This is an enormous sum of money.
it's tough because you never know how accurate these net worth estimates are, right? But basically, so he currently earns around $75 million a year. He has an estimated net worth of about between 600 to 700 million. So you are saying that he's going to be given an annual salary that's, say,
Over
60.
5 times more than what he's making.
Yes, but an annual salary that's also 60% of his net worth.
Yeah.
So it's substantial, of course. But then you have to question: is someone worth should someone be who's worth $600 million ever be making a decision based on finances? You know what I mean? Like Messi already has enough money to have an incredible life, for his children to have incredible lives, for his grandchildren. Like the foreseeable future of his family, barring very poor financial decision making, is extremely secure. So if you're him, you would hope, and this is kind of my criticism of Ronaldo, who's in a similar position, the decision should never be where I'm going to go, I'm only going to go there because I'm making the most money. Because that you should have secured that like a decade ago, in terms of that's not a factor. You could maybe tell me, hey, do I go to PSG or Real Madrid? Well, PSG are doubling my salary. Maybe then you think about it. But it shouldn't be the determining factor.
It shouldn't be. But if you told someone, no matter how much they have, that they could almost double their net worth in 1 year, I think you kind of have to consider it. I understand you have a ton of money, but you can always have more, and you can always live a little better. Your yacht can always be a little bigger.
Well, you got to go and live in Saudi Arabia, though. That's probably why you're there. Is going to be a little bit miserable, because you're not really going to get to live a great life while you're there. So the life, So that's the payoff, right? And for seemingly his family really love living in Paris. And you're talking about a family that's been used to being in Barcelona and then Paris, and now you're going to take them to Saudi Arabia. Pretty significant change in lifestyle there. So that's one to consider. And maybe he wouldn't even move his family there. And then that's another element to consider. I think, to me, if I were Messi, I would make that move. If I reached the point where I said I was going to retire, I don't have it in me anymore to play sort of elite football in Europe, then that's when the Saudi Arabian offer, if it were still on the table, would tempt me. Like, I wasn't going to play anyway. Why don't I just go there for a year and earn an obscene amount of money?
Almost 1.2 million a day.
Yeah.
It's insane. It's fucking crazy.
That's the moment when I would consider it. But I think right now, while you're still playing, you've just won a World Cup. You're part of a PSG team that's undoubtedly going to win the league. You're in a central part of that. You have a chance in the Champions League. You still will next season. And there's no real signs of a huge drop off on his part. There's also always talk of the fact that he wants to finish his career in Argentina, and then kind of have that storybook ending. Who knows what that means, because he's also consistently linked to the U.S. So, he's one of these players who's just everywhere. I think he don't pay tax either, so he'd avoid any of his tax issues in Saudi Arabia. So that would be a bonus for him.
Oh, it's just like Florida. Saudi Arabia and Florida share so many similarities.
As far as Messi's concerned, it's just like everywhere. But
True.
They'd probably be pitching him with a contract and be like, and no income tax on this. And he'd be like, I haven't paid income tax since 2004. What are you talking about? But yeah, I don't know. I think I'd be disappointed if he did it in the same way that I'm disappointed that Ronaldo did it. And who knows if Ronaldo suddenly reemerges in European football next season, having had like some 6 month jaunt in Saudi Arabia and made tons of money, and then is playing for Newcastle or Spurs or Sporting or whoever it is, but then you maybe say, I get it. He didn't have a lot of options on the table for that 6 month period, and he took a bunch of money and kept himself fit or something. You could say that, but the standard, I occasionally watch Saudi Arabian football from time to time because it will be on like Eurosport and stuff during the day, and so as background noise, I'll put it on. I've also seen Saudi Arabian teams play when they go to the Club World Championship. It's not good football. I mean, this is a real drop off. Like, I think it might be an eye opener for Ronaldo when he's sort of fully underway there of just how bad it is and how bad some of his teammates are. And it's going to be interesting to see with Ronaldo, who obviously isn't necessarily the most tolerant teammate,
No.
to see how much he puts up with playing with people who, if they went to Europe, would be probably playing third, fourth, fifth division football. Like that's it's an exponential difference between what he's been used to and what he's about to experience.
Yeah. Anything else from the world of sports, Eddie?
I don't think so. It was obviously a big weekend, but that was pretty much it.
Yeah.
Watch some other bits and pieces.
Nice weekend, I think, coming up next weekend too, with another good Premier League weekend and then another good football.
Yeah, even longer because City Spurs is on Thursday. So
you're right.
So things kind of kick off Thursday, then Bundesliga comes back on Friday.
About time. What kind of break is this? What do they get, like 3 months off?
It's been 3 months since there's been a Bundesliga match. It's kind of strange. You've sort of.
Is it just too cold to play? Is it actually, does that have anything to do with it?
They just normally have their winter break at this period of time anyway, and then whereas a lot of other leagues adjusted their winter break based on the mid-season World Cup, Germany kind of just took the decision of, no, the winter break will be the same. And look, I guess the argument would be if you wanted to have the fairest treatment of all the teams, that meant that even the big teams who have had more players at the World Cup, they get to come back and they get the same, a significant, sufficient enough period of rest to not be able to say that the World Cup impacted the rest of their season. Germany also cares a lot about their performance of their teams in Europe, right? So if you were German, the like Bayern Munich and Dortmund and stuff, you'd argue now get to be fresher as the Champions League is not far away from kicking off again. Yeah, Bayern Munich finally back on Friday and with quite a good game there. So yeah, you have City on Thursday, Bayern on Friday, good Premier League action, and NFL playoffs Saturday and Sunday. So another packed weekend of sport.
Somewhat sport adjacent. I while I was sick, I didn't have much to do, so I was watching a lot of television, and I watched The Devil's Hour. I don't know if you've seen this. It's on Amazon Prime. It's just a 6-episode show, pretty good. But one of the supporting cast is Jamie Tart from Ted Lasso, and it was nice to see Jamie Tart in a non-Jamie Tart Jamie Tart kind of role. So
this is really sporting adjacent.
Yeah,
far removed. Okay.
Yeah, we're
right.
Like
I did watch some of the new Netflix, The Breakpoint, the kind of documentary series about the.
Oh yeah, I was going to ask you, how is that?
I think if you don't have really any interest in tennis, it's probably a good thing to watch. I think if you already follow tennis, maybe season 2 they'll adjust. But so far, I guess my criticism would be is that there's so many tournaments and so many players that they didn't make the decision to really focus on a specific group. I mean, there are people who obviously have agreed to do it to a different level of detail, but you're a little bit all over the place. So if you like tennis...
Any focus on Kyrgios? Because that would have been the year, huh? To randomly pick him to focus on. That would have been a great year.
But you would have wanted to focus him. I think if I'd been making it, you'd have said, let's get 10 players or 5 players even maximum, and we're basically just going to follow their lives and what their experience is like. And instead, you're a little bit too much. There's too many storylines going on. There's too many people involved. And so if you don't like tennis or you don't follow tennis, it's probably interesting. But if you have any real interest in tennis, you're not getting any detail out of this that you wouldn't have already been aware of. It just shows you, hey, it's maybe not the dream life you've expected. If you're not one of the really top 10, if you're a doubles player, it's not a ton of money and it's quite a tough life. If you're not a super highly ranked player, it's not as much money as you maybe think it is. It's a lot of travel. It's a lot of being away from your family during the pandemic and post-pandemic restrictions. Still, it's even tougher. But aside from that, it's not like the F1 documentary series or even some of the Premier League.
I mean, that's what they're all trying to do, right?
Yeah, but like the F1, they made the correct decision. They go team by team. They didn't just do F1. Yeah. It's like this year we're working with this team. Tennis, they should have done the same thing. They should have been like, this year we've got one men's singles player, one women's singles player, maybe a doubles team, a doubles pair if you'd wanted to, but I don't think that's that necessary. And you should have just done that. And like, well, for the next 50 years, we can keep doing this and cycle through.
I'd be interested in the doubles because I wonder how close they are. Because I know sometimes it's just kind of players just play together who are two good players. But like, do they hang out a lot? Do they know each other pretty well? Do they text a lot?
So I think if you're one of
the, because there are some that are really close, right?
Yeah, I think if you're one of the, like, if you're a double specialist, and for the most part that means then you have a standard doubles partner and maybe a couple others who you play with depending on scheduling. That standard doubles partner you're spending a lot of time with because you're traveling to a lot of the tournaments with them and stuff. It is different if you're just one of those players who plays in doubles at Grand Slams and then you're trying to figure out, if you're Andy Murray and all of a sudden you play with Serena Williams for, Kyrgios has one of the stories that went viral of him playing mixed doubles with Serena Williams and how difficult he found it because she was like, for example, she said she'd serve first and she was kind of trying to dominate the play and they lost the first set and he was thinking to himself, like, I'm a better tennis player than you. I know you're Serena Williams, but I'm a better tennis player than you. So it said to her, like, the change of sets, like, you got to let me be more involved here. I think you have those dynamics, but then you also have the players who are, 30 weeks a year, probably traveling with each other and spending time together.
Yeah.
I assume you have to like each other if you're going to do that.
Yeah. The other thing I watched was Last Chance U, season 2 for the basketball one. And that was good. And it was good to see our
Coach Rob, former
Coach Rob, who's no longer with ELAC anymore. Took his own head coaching position for Mira Costa.
I haven't finished the season yet. I've watched probably 50% of the season, I think.
Yeah.
I think it always with Last Chance U, they're kind of better when you're one and done with a team. And I know they've announced now that they're not doing it with ELAC again.
They're not doing ELAC anymore. Yeah, that was like not a spoiler at the end, but
yeah. But I
Coach
do
Mosley
think
said he's done.
yeah, but they made a formal announcement anyway that they wouldn't be doing that. I do think it's better to kind of have the one season. I also think from the team's perspective, 2 back-to-back seasons, it means that the other teams are really aware of what you're doing. Probably changes how they interact with you. It probably changes the type of people who want to come and play for you, how they behave. We had that discussion with Coach Rob when he was on in terms of, like kind of how it changes how you manage egos and stuff. But it's good. Yeah. I mean, I would be disappointed. They could just make Last Chance U forever. I'm disappointed they don't make football anymore.
I know. I give those coaches so much credit because it is such a difficult job. One, you're coaching at a community college, right? So you're not getting any of the support from your college, university, whatever. It's not like you're coaching for a good D2 where you're getting a decent amount of money, you're getting a nice place to practice, you're getting a janitor to clean up, like they are doing everything themselves. The gym, the locker rooms, everything. And at the same time, you're not even really able to develop a team because the goal is to get a player in have him
Yeah,
play for 1 year, do really well, and get him out. So you have to simultaneously be a good basketball coach to win games, but also be a good manager of human beings to write someone who's clearly has deficiencies, whether it's mentally or physically, write them and get them out. Like that's crazy. Like it seems very, very difficult and like almost like a very selfish coaching job, like
yeah. Well,
there's not much in it for you.
which I think came across when we had Coach Rob on. Which I guess if this discussion interests anyone, is you can look back through our episodes and you'll find it there. Yeah, and I think they come across oftentimes less as coaches and kind of as sort of mentors and sort of
Yeah.
life like guidance counselors for these
Yeah.
people more. And also, as he mentioned, there's a lot of unrealistic expectations from those players. You
Yeah.
talk about people
Especially this season too. You can see it.
who think they're going to be NBA All Stars, and
Yep.
there's not a lot of people who've become NBA All Stars from. Because I also think that's the huge difference between the football and the basketball. It's like you can be playing junior college in football, and you can end up being like a first round draft pick and become an NFL superstar. There's a ton of people who followed that path. There's not a lot of people who've been playing junior college basketball and then turned into NBA All Stars. Like that is an unusual path to follow. Obviously not impossible, but when you've got
Yeah.
7 players on your team, all of whom are convinced, like I mean that not only would make you the greatest junior college team of all time, it would make you one of the greatest college teams of all time.
Yeah.
If you believed all of their egos, they're better than like that Kentucky team from a few years ago that had like 6 first-round draft picks on it. And that was a
Yeah.
Division I school recruiting the absolute best players in the country year in, year out.
Yeah. And you can see too, because there are players who they just want to go somewhere and play basketball at a university level, get some sort of scholarship and maybe get a degree and then call it. And like that's a very realistic goal.
Yeah. Or maybe
Maybe you went
or
off course, something happened, and you think you can be at that level to play D1 or D2, depending on it, and you just want to finish out your career at the highest level you can and not wonder, say I could have been playing in
yeah.
a high Division 2, or maybe I could have played Division 1. I could have been okay there and not be able to do that. Like that's realistic. But there are still people. I mean, there's one player in particular in this season who still thinks he could go to any Division 1 school. And, I'll spoil alert it. He's still on the team this year, like this year, like the following year after this is filmed, he hasn't moved on. And this is the same person who thought he could be in the NBA and, comparing himself to NBA point guards.
Yeah, no, I think that's true. And I think there's the hope that you can pay for your college education. That's the most realistic goal, which when you hear the coaches talk, that's what they're kind of trying to get people to do. Go to a
Yep.
Division II school, go to a Division I school, maybe get yourself a scholarship. Don't pay for college. That's a huge win. Then there's the maybe realistic further thought of I could go abroad and play professional basketball
D
somewhere.
League or something. Yeah.
Or like I can go to Europe. I can be in Turkey for a few years and get to experience what it's like to play professional sport. And you'd think not only is that a realistic expectation, you probably shouldn't try and encourage someone to not do that because, as anyone who I'm sure you and I can both relate, you love playing sports. Like it's sad when that kind of ends and you can maybe maintain it on some level with some sort of, recreational league that you can take part in, but it's not the same thing. So the idea of playing kind of at a high level, you should try and keep doing that as long as you can do. But yeah, anyone who's there, you need to sit down. I think any player who sits down there and says, I'm going to be a starter in the NBA, can be like, okay, we need to have a heart to heart here.
I love when the coach talks to them and then they kind of think they get it through. And then the end of the discussion is like, yeah, I'm still going to try for the NBA. And they'll walk out and Coach Rosie's just like, he don't get it, man. He just don't understand. He don't get it. It's so funny.
And it's interesting to me because actually I feel like when you compare it to the football version, where there were definitely some huge egos and people with massive goals, I feel like most of the football players were more realistic. There was way more players on the football team saying, I just want to get a scholarship somewhere. Like I don't want to pay for college. Like I want to be the first person in my family to graduate with, like a college degree. There were way more players talking about that in the football, even though it was much more realistic for them to make the NFL. Whereas almost, I mean, there's 9 guys on that team who think they could go to the NBA.
All right. I guess with that, we'll wrap it up for today and get ready for our NFC divisional round playoff.
Yeah. All right. Talk to you later.
Cheerio.